You think it's lust, but it's actually emptiness. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Carl Jung. In a world obsessed with instant gratification, many confuse lust with longing, desire with disconnection. But what if what you're really craving isn't physical, it's spiritual? On Spiritual Wisdom, we explore how these urges often mask a deeper emptiness, a hunger for meaning and soul connection. If you've ever felt hollow, even in moments of pleasure, you're not alone and you're not broken. This video will help you uncover the truth behind the illusion and find healing through self-awareness. Before we begin, take a moment to reflect. Have you ever mistaken lust for something deeper? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay connected to your journey of growth and truth. 1. Lust is a symptom, not the root problem. Lust is not the core issue. It is a signal, a flare sent up from the soul, revealing that something far deeper is aching to be seen. What feels like sexual desire is often spiritual emptiness in disguise. We reach for bodies, fantasies, and stimulation, but what we're really starving for is presence, intimacy, and meaning. The momentary thrill masks a quieter grief, a longing not just for touch, but for truth. Beneath the craving lies a wound, often invisible, rooted in loneliness, unworthiness, or the fear of being forgotten. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And so, we scroll late into the night. We seek validation through attraction, distraction, or quick release. But even in the heat of the moment, the hollowness creeps in. We tell ourselves it's just desire, but it's not. It's pain wearing perfume. It's abandonment echoing through the body. It's a cry for connection in a culture that confuses attention for love. True spiritual wisdom begins when we pause and ask, what am I really longing for? Not what do I want to feel in my body, but what do I need to feel in my soul? The answer is rarely lust. More often, it is to be seen without performing, to be valued without offering something in return, to be held without hiding our sadness. Lust, in many cases, is a mask we wear to feel worthy in a world that taught us our value is conditional. The tragedy is not in the craving, but in misunderstanding its purpose. We chase pleasure because we're afraid of stillness. But stillness is the only place where healing happens. When we stop running from the emptiness and start sitting with it, something sacred emerges. We find that we don't need more stimulation. We need more softness. We need to be met, not consumed. We need to be known, not merely touched. And so, healing begins with honesty. When we can say to ourselves, this isn't lust, this is a hunger to matter, the spell begins to break. The old pattern starts to unravel. We begin to make choices from alignment, not from avoidance. We stop seeking others to fix our feelings, and instead, we become intimate with our own emotional landscape. In that space, where the ache is honored rather than silenced, we discover a deeper truth. What we thought was lust was actually love we never gave ourselves, love we never received, love that has been waiting all along for us to return. The body may call out in craving, but the soul is calling out for connection. And when we begin to respond to the soul's voice, everything changes. This is the heart of spiritual wisdom, knowing that every desire is a doorway, every ache is an invitation. And when we walk through it with courage, we no longer live on the surface. We begin to live from the center. Do you feel the truth in this message? If you do, declare it with intention in the comments. I see beyond the craving, I seek true connection. Let this be your reminder that real healing starts from within. 2. The craving reflects soul disconnection. Lust isn't just a desire for physical intimacy. It's often a symptom of something deeper, something spiritual. It emerges when we are disconnected from our inner world, our soul, our purpose, our emotions. In that silence within, where we've grown numb or restless, lust shows up as a quick fix. It mimics connection, but in truth, it replaces depth with stimulation. Carl Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And in today's culture, nothing is more accessible or addictive than the fantasy of lust when we're trying to avoid the discomfort of our own emptiness. The craving comes strongest when we feel most distant from ourselves, those late nights alone, when the phone becomes a portal to distraction. We scroll not just for images, but for meaning, for something to soothe the ache of disconnection. But what we're really longing for isn't another body or another escape. It's the return to ourselves, to feel seen, not by others, but by the soul we've neglected. Lust is not the root issue. It is the surface reaction to a spiritual void within. When we are emotionally disconnected, we crave stimulation. When we are spiritually asleep, we hunger for intensity to feel alive. And when our purpose is blurred, we reach for anything that feels urgent, even if it leaves us emptier than before. That's because lust cannot fulfill what only spiritual awakening can repair. You may find yourself chasing one experience after another, but each time, the silence afterward speaks louder. And in that silence, your soul is asking you to listen. The problem isn't the desire for pleasure. Pleasure is natural, even sacred, when aligned with presence. The problem is when that desire becomes a mask for avoidance. When we use lust to run from loneliness, to bury sadness, or to silence anxiety, we create a cycle that deepens the very wounds we're trying to escape. It becomes a pattern of self-abandonment, where we give our energy away, hoping someone else will reflect our worth back to us. But no one can reconnect you to your soul but you. And this is where spiritual awakening begins, not in judgment, but in awareness. When we stop numbing and start feeling, when we stop chasing and start listening, that craving you feel, it's your soul missing its own voice. The ache in your chest isn't just about someone else, it's about the self you've forgotten, the presence you've been avoiding. Lust, in its false form, is urgent. It wants now, fast, more. But the soul moves differently. It asks you to be still, to be brave enough to feel the emptiness instead of patching it up with fantasy. Because only when you face that inner space with honesty can you begin to fill it with truth, with light, with you. And as you do, the hold that lust has on you weakens. The cycle begins to dissolve. And what remains is something far more powerful than desire. It's self-connection, presence, and peace. This is the quiet revolution of spiritual awakening, when we no longer run from the void, but return to it and find ourselves waiting there. Have you ever felt a craving that wasn't really about pleasure, but about something missing inside? If you've faced moments like this, share your story in the comments so others can feel seen and supported. If not, simply comment, "I choose to reconnect," and let's walk this path of inner alignment together. 3. Carl Jung saw lust as spiritual hunger. Lust is not always what it seems. Carl Jung believed that what many call lust is often a deeper signal, a hunger not of the body, but of the soul. He taught that unresolved wounds and unmet emotional needs don't disappear. Instead, they disguise themselves in the form of cravings, fantasies, and impulsive desires. We chase bodies, distractions, and momentary highs because it feels easier than sitting with our own emptiness. But the truth is, what you're longing for isn't physical pleasure, it's emotional presence. When the soul is fragmented, when you've been abandoned emotionally or denied your authentic voice, that pain festers beneath the surface. It becomes unbearable silence, and we try to drown it with noise scrolling through faces, seeking touch without meaning, creating false intimacy. As Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And this is exactly what's happening. Lust becomes a smokescreen for a deeper spiritual disconnection. You may think you want their body, but what you truly crave is to be seen fully, without performance. You want to be understood, without having to explain yourself, to be touched not just on your skin, but in the places where you felt invisible. And when that doesn't happen, the cycle continues. You chase, you feel empty, you repeat. And afterward, when the moment fades, you're left with the same hollow ache. Not because you're weak, but because what you're truly missing can't be found in another's body. It has to be reclaimed within your own. This confusion between lust and loneliness is deeply common in modern life. We glorify hookup culture, but rarely talk about the emotional scars it leaves. We avoid commitment, call it freedom, and yet lie awake at night, wondering why we feel unfulfilled. Emotional hunger masquerades as desire, and we feed the body, hoping it will quiet the soul. But the soul doesn't want escape. It wants connection. Real connection. And not with someone else first, but with you. Ava, a woman with a glowing career and a carefully curated life, seemed to have it all. But at night, she drowned in casual conversations, meaningless touch, and the ache of being emotionally unknown. Her tears didn't come from heartbreak. They came from self-neglect. When she finally stopped running and started asking herself what she truly needed, she realized that her lust wasn't lust at all. It was spiritual starvation. That moment cracked something open. She began tending to her own heart, giving herself the affection she kept seeking from others. Her desires didn't disappear. They transformed. They became aligned with real intimacy, not addiction to escape. Carl Jung's wisdom invites us to stop pathologizing desire and start interpreting it. He saw every craving as a clue, every repeated pattern as a message. What if, instead of shaming ourselves, we got curious? What if, instead of chasing external validation, we learned to sit with the ache and hear what it's really saying? Healing doesn't come from suppression. It comes from integration by holding the wounded parts of you with tenderness and truth. And when you start doing that, lust loses its power to confuse you. You begin to see clearly. It was never about the person. It was about the part of you that longed to come home. If this helped you see lust in a deeper light, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep exploring the hidden roots of our spiritual hunger together. 4. The shadow self drives compulsive behavior. When parts of you are rejected, buried, or silenced, they don't vanish. They hide in the shadows and wait to be seen. This is the shadow self Carl Jung spoke of. The lost fragments of your identity that begin to pull the strings of your life when left unacknowledged. You think you're acting out of desire, but what's really driving you is disconnection. The lust you feel isn't always about physical attraction. It's about chasing wholeness through someone else's reflection. You don't want them. You want the part of you they remind you of, the soft part, the free part, the emotional part you weren't allowed to express. And so, you chase, you scroll, you fantasize, not because you're obsessed with pleasure, but because you're trying to escape the numbness that silence left behind. Addiction begins here, not always to substances, but to stimulation, fantasy, attention, and pursuit. Every time you crave someone who doesn't see you, or get stuck in a pattern that leaves you empty, it's not just bad luck. It's your shadow acting out the grief of being unseen. Loneliness isn't new. It's ancient. It's the echo of the part of you you abandoned when it felt unsafe to be whole. Spiritual wisdom reveals that what we often call desire is really a deep cry for reunion with ourselves. The body becomes a battlefield where we fight for the love we once withheld from our own soul. You keep reaching for their body, their eyes, their energy, hoping it will quiet the ache inside you. But even in the middle of intimacy, you feel the distance, you feel the void. Because no matter how close someone gets, they can't fill a space that was made for your own self-acceptance. And still, the cycle continues. You crave them, you get them, and you still feel empty. You blame lust, but it's not lust. It's grief. It's the heartbreak of a self split into pieces and scattered across every person you ever ran after. This is why healing doesn't come through more touch, more fantasy, more attention. It comes when you stop running. When you pause long enough to ask, what am I actually hungry for? That hunger isn't shameful. It's sacred. It's the trail that leads you back to your own forgotten heart. The shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to reunite with you. But it will scream until you listen. It will pull you into temptation and obsession until you realize that what you're truly looking for is not outside of you. It's inside the softness you silenced, the innocence you buried, the freedom you denied yourself. Every time you meet it with gentleness instead of guilt, you bring another piece of your soul back home. This is spiritual wisdom, learning to recognize the difference between craving and calling, between lust and longing, between distraction and divine invitation. And when you learn this, desire stops being a trap and becomes a teacher. Comment below, I reclaim my shadow with love. If you're ready to stop being controlled by what you've buried and start living in wholeness. 5. You're projecting your lost soul onto others. You think it's lust, but it's actually the aching cry of a soul trying to return home. Carl Jung revealed that men unconsciously project their inner feminine, known as the anima, onto women. That means what feels like intense attraction may not be about the other person at all. It's about your own forgotten self. You're not truly chasing her. You're chasing the lost tenderness, the emotional depth, the softness within you that you once buried to appear strong. Lust, in this sense, is the illusion. The truth hiding underneath is a desperate yearning to reconnect with the part of you that was silenced, shamed, or never given permission to feel. When you crave her touch, it's really the warmth of your own heart that you miss. When you long for her attention, you're really crying out for your own self-recognition. And when you find yourself empty after the high fades, it's not because she didn't satisfy you. It's because you weren't truly seeking her. You were seeking healing. This cycle of desire, indulgence, regret is not about pleasure. It's about pain. It's about avoiding your own depths by reaching for someone else's surface. Jung warned us, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. That's exactly what lust becomes: a distraction, a performance, a fantasy built to keep you from facing the sacred ache of being disconnected from your spiritual core. But the body knows. Even in the heat of the moment, the emptiness hums underneath. And afterward, when silence returns, it speaks louder than ever. That's not guilt. That's grief. You are grieving a version of yourself that you abandon. Society teaches men to sever their softness, to hide their tears, to lead with hardness. But buried beneath that armor is a spirit desperate to feel whole. The anima doesn't disappear. It hides. And she whispers through late-night urges, through lonely fantasies, through those moments you mistake for desire. You scroll, you chase, you fantasize, not because you're bad or broken, but because your soul is starved of depth, starved of stillness, starved of you. This is the call to awaken, not spiritually bypass, not shame yourself into control, but awaken. What if this hunger was never about the other person, but always about your own neglected soul? What if the emptiness you feel isn't a flaw, but a compass pointing you home? The path isn't outward, it's inward, toward your own softness, your own stillness, your own sacred balance. This is spiritual awakening disguised as lust. And once you see it for what it is, you can finally stop running. You can finally stop projecting. And you can begin the work of loving what you thought was unlovable within you. Because the real desire was never for a woman. It was for your wholeness. Do you feel this truth deep in your soul? If you do, declare it in the comments. I reclaim the lost parts of myself. Let your healing begin with awareness. 6. Repetitive pleasure seeking leads to numbness. Repetitive pleasure seeking, especially through lust, creates a dangerous illusion of aliveness while slowly draining your inner world. The more you indulge in it without awareness, the less you actually feel. At first, it offers a sense of thrill, a momentary spark that convinces you you're alive. But as time passes, that spark becomes a shadow. What once stirred your senses now leaves you numb. You're not coming alive. You're disconnecting from your soul. Lust, when mindless, becomes not a celebration of desire, but a form of self-abandonment. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And that's exactly what happens when lust becomes a habit. It isn't about connection, or intimacy, or even pleasure. It becomes a distraction from silence, a way to fill the aching void that whispers truths you don't want to face. The more you chase temporary highs, the more you bury the real question underneath. What are you truly longing for? Not in your body, but in your spirit. In a society driven by stimulation, where attention is currency and instant gratification is the norm, it's easy to mistake lust for meaning. You scroll through curated images, swipe for validation, and chase bodies as if they hold the key to fulfillment. But deep down, you know none of it ever fills you. You could have 10 lovers and still feel alone. You could receive endless attention and still feel unseen. This is not a failure of your desires. It is a failure to meet your soul's deeper need. Carl Jung believed that our compulsions often stem from the unintegrated parts of ourselves, the shadow. Lust is not just physical hunger. It's often emotional and spiritual hunger disguised as craving. It reflects grief, loneliness, and an unspoken ache for intimacy that goes far beyond the body. When you suppress those emotions instead of facing them, they come back as urges, obsessions, and patterns that repeat themselves until you wake up. There's a story of a man named Daniel who lived a life many would envy: success, looks, attention. But each night, he drowned in distractions. He thought what he needed was release, more pleasure, more novelty. But what he really needed was to feel again. He didn't want another body. He wanted meaning. And when he finally stopped, turned off the noise, and sat with the emptiness, he found something sacred in the silence, the beginning of healing. The truth is, spiritual awakening doesn't always come through light. Sometimes it begins in the darkness of our disconnection. In those lonely nights when the body is restless and the heart is numb, that's where the real calling lives. Lust can never satisfy what only love, purpose, and presence can offer. And until you see that, you will keep chasing illusions that leave you more hollow each time. To feel again, to create again, to connect deeply, you must be willing to let go of the false comfort of constant pleasure. You must face yourself, not with shame, but with compassion. Because your cravings are not the enemy, they're messages. They point to where you need to heal. They're not about weakness, they're about wounds. And Carl Jung reminds us, what you resist not only persists, it grows stronger. Let this be a reminder that you are not your habits. You are the soul underneath them. And your soul is not numb. It's waiting for you to return. If this message spoke to you, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss content that helps you reconnect with your true self. Type in the comments, "I choose presence over numbness," to affirm your path back to inner aliveness. 7. You must stop escaping and start listening. You must stop escaping and start listening. That's where the healing begins, not in resistance, but in presence. Most people run from their cravings. They suppress them, numb them, label them as weakness or sin. But these urges aren't always about lust. Often, they are echoes from the forgotten corners of your soul, whispers from the parts of you that never got to speak. What you're calling lust might actually be loneliness dressed in desire, grief disguised as hunger. Lust is easier to name. Emptiness, on the other hand, forces you to feel. When you chase pleasure compulsively, it's not always pleasure you're after. It's a connection, safety, meaning. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." That includes mistaking intimacy for validation, or using sex as a temporary bandage for an unacknowledged wound. Your cravings are not wrong. They're trying to tell you something. They are not problems to be solved. They are teachers' signposts pointing toward what still hurts, what still feels unmet, unloved, and unworthy. You've been taught to avoid pain and call it discipline. But true spiritual wisdom invites you to lean in. Instead of escaping your impulses, stay with them. Watch them rise. Ask them what they want to reveal. It's not about shaming yourself. It's about becoming curious. Sit with the discomfort. Hold space for the ache. When you do that, something miraculous happens. The part of you that was begging for attention softens. The emptiness becomes less hollow. And you begin to see that what you were seeking in others was a mirror for the love you hadn't yet given yourself. Healing is not suppression. It is integration. The cravings, the urges, the fantasies, they are fragments of your inner world trying to come home. When you welcome them instead of banishing them, you begin to embody spiritual awakening. You stop treating your desire as a problem and start recognizing it as a doorway. You stop asking, How do I get rid of this feeling? And start asking, where did this feeling begin? That question doesn't lead you away from yourself. It leads you deeper in. There is a sacred kind of bravery in staying present with your need instead of performing healing. Spiritual wisdom doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be honest. And honesty starts with admitting that the ache you feel is not about lust. It's about something older, quieter, and more tender. It's about the moment you decided your longing was too much. It's about the version of you who learned to chase connection through the body because the soul never felt safe enough to speak. If this message resonates with your soul, speak it aloud with faith. I am ready to face myself. I choose presence over escape. I am listening now. And if you're walking this healing path, like this video, subscribe, and share your truth in the comments below. 8. Integration transforms lust into wholeness. You think it's lust. That heat in your chest, the ache in your belly, the fixation on someone's touch. It feels physical, but it's not. It's energetic. Beneath the surface of what you call desire lies something far more ancient, a hunger for wholeness. Lust is only the surface symptom. The real wound is the separation from your own soul. Carl Jung didn't tell us to kill our desires. He urged us to understand them. He knew that our compulsions are not enemies, but messages from the unconscious. Lust is one of the loudest. It doesn't ask for pleasure, it begs for integration. What you chase in another is often the reflection of what is missing within. And until you make peace with that longing, you will keep mistaking the body for the balm. When the inner feminine is ignored, your softness, intuition, sensuality, and emotion, it doesn't disappear. It distorts. And lust becomes the coping mechanism for a soul that feels fragmented. Spiritual awakening begins the moment you stop seeing lust as sin and start seeing it as a signal. Your body is not betraying you. It's inviting you to listen. It's asking you to stop escaping into fantasy and start returning to your essence. True integration is not repression. It's transformation. When you meet your hunger with honesty, when you stop shaming the longing and instead bring it to light, something beautiful happens. Lust loses its chaos. It becomes sacred. Desire becomes devotion. Pleasure becomes presence. Instead of consuming someone to feel alive, you begin to cultivate aliveness from within. Think about the last time you felt intense desire for someone. Was it really them? Or was it the feeling you imagined they could give you? Most of the time, we're not longing for sex. We're longing to be seen, to feel safe in someone's arms, to be touched in places we've kept hidden even from ourselves. And when those needs go unmet inside, we project them outward, hoping someone else will fulfill what only inner union can provide. Jung understood this deeply. He taught that we must confront the shadow of the rejected parts of ourselves if we are to ever be whole. Lust is often a masked cry from the shadow, pleading to be acknowledged, not punished. And when you bring awareness to it, something profound happens. That same energy that once led you into obsession can now lead you into creativity, presence, and even divine connection. So instead of chasing, you begin attracting. Not from hunger, but from wholeness. You don't need to grasp. You don't need to perform. You simply radiate. And this is the turning point. Lust becomes love. Fantasy becomes truth. The impulse to escape becomes the invitation to awaken. This is not denial. It's alchemy. And spiritual awakening is the fire in which this alchemy happens. Through this process, desire is no longer dirty or dangerous. It becomes sacred fuel. It becomes a form of knowing, a compass, a whisper from your higher self, pointing you back to the parts of you that need healing. And when you respond, not with shame but with compassion, you begin to reclaim every part of yourself that was lost in the search for more. Lust, then, is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of your return. If this message has awakened something within you, comment with faith. I am integrating my desires into wholeness. I trust this sacred transformation. 9. True healing is a return to self-love and presence. True healing is a return to self-love and presence. You've been taught to numb the ache through lust, through distractions, through validation from others. But none of these things are actually satisfy. The more you chase, the emptier you feel. It's not that you desire another body, it's that you've been disconnected from your own. You think it's lust, but it's actually emptiness. And no matter how many people you let in, it will never fill what only your own presence can heal. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." That avoidance often looks like pleasure-seeking. It wears the mask of desire. But underneath the surface, what we're really craving is reconnection with the self, our forgotten truth, our lost wholeness. Lust becomes a convenient escape from the silence we fear. But that silence is not our enemy. It is the doorway to transformation. Look at the way modern life is designed. You're up at night, scrolling through your phone, seeking a fix, just one more video, one more message, one more validation hit. You tell yourself it's nothing, just passing time, just curiosity. But if you really slowed down, you'd hear it. That quiet ache in your chest. That sense that something deeper is missing. This isn't about sex. This is about soul starvation. Lust is not the enemy, but mistaking it for connection is. When you use it to avoid your pain, it becomes a distraction from the deeper healing that is calling you. It tells you that you're seeking someone, but you're really seeking yourself, your inner child, your forgotten essence, your buried grief. Because the real intimacy you crave isn't physical, it's emotional, spiritual, sacred. Carl Jung understood that our behaviors are often symbolic of what we're unwilling to confront internally. You can't heal what you won't face. And what many are running from is not rejection. It's the unbearable weight of their own loneliness. But loneliness is not a punishment. It's an invitation. It's your soul saying, "Return to me." When you accept that invitation, you stop chasing and start remembering. You remember that your worth is not measured by who wants you, but by how deeply you've chosen yourself. A woman once shared her story, how, for years, she confused sexual attention with empowerment. She believed that being desired meant being valuable. But each time she gave herself away, she felt less like herself. It wasn't until she stopped running, sat in silence, and let herself feel the emptiness she'd avoided for so long that her spiritual awakening began. Not in a temple or retreat, but in the quiet honesty of her own room. That's when she began to rebuild, not with men, but with truth. You don't need more partners. You need more presence. You don't need someone else's arms. You need your own embrace. Real intimacy starts when you stop performing and start being. When you allow yourself to be seen, not for your body, but for your being. That's when love becomes sacred. That's when healing becomes real. That's when lust transforms into wisdom. Carl Jung's teachings remind us that every act of avoidance is a message from the unconscious, and every return to self is a step toward integration. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be found by yourself. That's where the longing ends. That's where the wholeness begins. To affirm your return to wholeness, declare your intention. Comment below, "I choose self-love and presence," to honor your healing journey and inspire others to come home to themselves too. Thank you for taking this journey inward with us. If today's message helped you see beyond surface desires and understand the deeper hunger of the soul, know that this awareness is the first step toward true healing and connection. If this resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of insight, truth, and transformation in our upcoming videos. Until next time, stay awake, stay whole, and keep choosing soul over sensation. Don't tolerate these 6 behaviors from anyone, not even family. Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. Prentice Hemphill. In today's world, especially within families, love is often confused with sacrifice, silence, and self-abandonment. But what if true love includes respect, truth, and honoring your inner peace? In this episode of Spiritual Wisdom, inspired by Carl Jung's teachings, we'll explore 6 toxic behaviors you should never tolerate, not even from those closest to you. Because spiritual growth requires courage, clarity, and the ability to say, "This is not love." As you watch, ask yourself, have I been tolerating pain in the name of loyalty? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might empower someone else to choose self-respect today. 1. Emotional manipulation. Emotional manipulation doesn't always look aggressive. Sometimes it comes dressed as love, a kind of love that's conditional. "If you loved me, you'd do this," or "You're disappointing me again." Over time, you begin to shrink yourself, not because you want to, but because you feel like you have to. You say yes to things that don't feel right. You doubt your instincts. You silence your voice, all to keep the peace. But peace built on guilt is not peace. It's self-abandonment. Carl Jung called this psychic possession, when another person's unresolved emotions hijack your own. In families, this is especially common. We grow up conditioned to equate love with obedience, loyalty with silence. We're told that family comes first, no matter what. But what if putting family first constantly means putting yourself last? Many people live their whole lives playing roles they never chose. The obedient son, the perfect daughter, the responsible sibling. These roles come with unspoken contracts. Stay small so we can feel big, or carry our emotional baggage so we don't have to face it. When you try to step outside that role, even slightly, guilt rushes in like a wave. You start wondering if you're the problem. That's not love. That's programming. Take the example of a woman in her 30s who finally got a promotion at work. It was everything she had worked for, but instead of celebrating, her parents asked if the job would take her away from the family. When she tried to explain how important this was for her, she was met with silence and passive disappointment. No shouting, no drama. Just subtle emotional withdrawal was a signal that she had stepped out of line. And so, she started questioning herself again. Was she selfish? Was she abandoning her roots? Or was she just finally choosing herself? This is how emotional manipulation operates. Quietly, persistently, and always with an undercurrent of guilt. Carl Jung understood how dangerous this could be for the soul. He taught that the true self cannot emerge while it's entangled in someone else's shadow. When your life becomes an unconscious reaction to someone else's expectations, you are no longer living, you're performing. The moment you recognize this pattern is the moment everything changes. You start noticing how certain people drain your energy, how your stomach tightens before certain conversations, how you leave family gatherings feeling smaller than when you arrived. These are not coincidences. They are signals your intuition trying to wake you up. Awareness is painful, but it is also the beginning of freedom. You don't need to explain your boundaries. You don't need to justify your healing. And you certainly don't need to carry the emotional weight of people who refuse to carry their own. Jung didn't tell us to burn bridges. He told us to open our eyes, to see clearly. Because once you see the truth, it becomes harder and harder to lie to yourself. And the truth is, being loyal to others should never require betrayal of yourself. If you find yourself shrinking to maintain someone else's comfort, you're not at peace. You're in survival. And you deserve more than survival. You deserve to grow, to express, to stand tall in your truth without apology. Healing from emotional manipulation isn't about blaming others. It's about choosing to reclaim your voice, your power, and your path, even if it means disappointing the people who taught you to abandon yourself. Have you ever realized when someone's love came with conditions? If you've broken free from emotional manipulation, share your story in the comments to inspire others. If you're still finding your voice, comment, "I'm ready to reclaim my truth," and let's heal together, one step at a time. 2. Suppression of your true self. They say they love you, but only if you stay small. Only if you fit their image. Only if you silence your difference. That kind of love feels tight, like a costume stitched from someone else's fear. It's subtle, almost invisible at first. A comment here, a sigh there. Don't act like that. You're making us look bad. These aren't just words. They're emotional chains. And when they come from family, they cut deeper. Because we're taught that family is supposed to be your safe space, not the place where your soul starts to shrink. But Carl Jung saw through this illusion. He taught that every human being has an inner calling toward individuation, the sacred journey of becoming whole. Yet this journey is often blocked not by enemies, but by those closest to us. Why? Because your evolution threatens their comfort. Your truth mirrors the parts of themselves they've abandoned. And instead of celebrating your light, they try to dim it, not out of hatred, but out of fear. The family unit becomes a mold. And if you don't fit, you feel like a problem. Maybe they try to change the way you speak, dress, dream. Maybe they say you're too sensitive, too intense, too much. But what they're really saying is, we don't know how to love you as you are. And so, you learn to hide. You trade pieces of your soul for temporary acceptance. You perform. You conform. And all the while, your inner self quietly suffers. Jung warned us, the greatest tragedy is not in being rejected, but in rejecting ourselves to be loved. When you deny your truth to make others feel better, you abandon your own becoming. That's not love. That's emotional manipulation wrapped in tradition. Real love creates space. It says, be all of you, even if I don't understand it. It doesn't guilt you into silence or shame you into sameness. It honors your growth, even when it changes the dynamic. Spiritual wisdom teaches that loyalty without authenticity is bondage. You can love your family and still refuse to betray yourself. You can honor where you came from without staying where you no longer belong. Boundaries don't mean you're ungrateful. They mean you're awake. And when you finally stop apologizing for your light, you begin to see who really supports your growth and who was only invested in your compliance. So if your authenticity threatens their comfort, don't shrink. Shine brighter, not out of rebellion, but out of reverence for the self you were always meant to become. Because when you walk in your truth, even if you walk alone, you walk in freedom. And no relationship, not even family, is worth the cost of losing your soul. If you're ready to reclaim your authenticity and no longer shrink to meet others' expectations, comment below. I give myself permission to be fully me. Your journey to wholeness begins the moment you choose truth over approval. 3. Constant criticism disguised as concern. Some family members speak in a way that cuts you down, yet they label it as love. They say it's honesty, that it's for your own good, but what it really does is shrink your spirit. The harsh comments, the backhanded compliments, the criticism disguised as concern, they don't build you up. They quietly break you down. And because it comes from someone close, you start to believe it. You start to carry their voice as if it were your own, turning it into self-doubt. But that voice is not your truth. It's a reflection of their own unhealed pain. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the parts of ourselves we refuse to accept, so we unconsciously project them onto others. When your parent, sibling, or relative harshly judges your choices, your personality, or your path, it's often their own suppressed fears speaking. Maybe they never had the courage to chase their dreams, so they call you reckless for chasing yours. Maybe they were taught to abandon themselves to please others, so they shame you for setting boundaries. It's not about you. It's about what they haven't faced within themselves. This is why spiritual awakening is so essential. It's not just about peace or positivity. It's about clarity. It's about waking up to the fact that much of the criticism you've received was never really yours to carry. Spiritual awakening teaches you to stop inheriting emotional debts from people who never paid their own. It gives you the courage to see through the mask of concern and recognize the control underneath it. Because concern uplifts, control belittles. And knowing the difference is the beginning of freedom. They may say it's just how they are, that you're too sensitive, that you need to toughen up. But you're not too sensitive. You're simply waking up to energy that no longer resonates with your soul. You're starting to trust your inner truth more than the fear-based noise around you. And that's power. Because once you stop internalizing their shadows, you stop living a life shaped by guilt and start building a life shaped by authenticity. You don't have to argue with them. You don't have to explain yourself. You only need to silently reclaim your identity, one truth at a time. Love them if you want, but do it from a place that doesn't cost you your peace. Honor their journey, but stop making their unhealed wounds your emotional responsibility. That's not love. That's self-sacrifice disguised as loyalty. When you begin to see clearly, everything changes. You no longer bend to please those who only feel powerful when you feel small. You no longer confuse emotional manipulation with care. You simply stand in your truth, calmly and fully, and in doing so, you set yourself free, not by changing them, but by refusing to let their pain become your personality. If this message helped you recognize the difference between true concern and hidden criticism, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep uncovering these hidden patterns together. Your voice matters here. 4. Guilt as a tool of control. Guilt is one of the most invisible yet powerful tools of emotional manipulation, especially within families. When someone says, "You never call anymore," or "After all I've done for you," it might sound like concern, but it's often a veiled attempt to control. These aren't invitations for connection. They're pressure points designed to make you feel like you've failed. Carl Jung understood how deeply rooted these emotional tactics can be. He taught that guilt, especially when it comes from those closest to us, has the power to distort our identity and keep us trapped in patterns that don't serve our growth. In daily life, this looks like putting your dreams on hold because you're afraid someone might feel abandoned. It looks like saying yes when you want to say no, just to avoid the heavy silence of someone's disapproval. You might feel selfish for wanting space, cruel for choosing your truth, or ungrateful for not constantly sacrificing yourself. But living for someone else's comfort slowly erases your own soul. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Yet how can you do that if every decision is filtered through the fear of guilt? This guilt is not coming from your conscience, it's coming from emotional conditioning. And here's the hard truth. Many people don't love you in the way you need to be loved. They love you in the way that keeps them comfortable. That's why your growth can feel like betrayal to them. They'll tell you you've changed, as if that's a bad thing. They'll remind you of everything they've done for you, not because they want appreciation, but because they want leverage. But guilt that punishes your freedom is not love. It is control disguised as care. And the more you yield to it, the more you disconnect from your spiritual awakening. Your purpose, your voice, your peace all get drowned in the noise of someone else's expectations. Carl Jung believed that true individuation, the process of becoming your whole self, can only begin when you break free from inherited emotional patterns. That includes guilt-based loyalty. Breaking the guilt cycle doesn't mean you stop loving people. It means you stop betraying yourself to earn love. It means you stop shrinking to fit into someone else's comfort zone. It means you start living not out of obligation, but out of authenticity. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. And every time you say no to manipulation, you say yes to healing. You are not here to carry the emotional weight of those who refuse to carry their own. You are not responsible for the happiness of those who use guilt to bind you. Love is not a debt, and your life is not a currency to be spent on other people's approval. Let go of guilt, step into your truth, and remember, you are not wrong for choosing freedom. You are finally waking up. If this message spoke to your soul, let it be known. Guilt will no longer control your story. Comment below, "I choose my peace over their guilt." And if you're ready to keep awakening to your truth, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another moment of clarity. 5. Verbal and emotional abuse normalized. Excuses like, "That's just how they are," have been used for far too long to justify verbal and emotional abuse, especially within families. These statements don't come from love. They come from denial, passed down like family recipes. They protect dysfunction, not people. Yelling, shaming, manipulation, and gaslighting, even without physical violence, are still abuse. And when these behaviors are brushed off or normalized, they become invisible chains that trap generations in emotional prisons. The damage isn't just felt in the moment, it shapes identity, self-worth, and our idea of love. Carl Jung warned us about the wounded inner child, the part of us that unconsciously returns to the very environments that once hurt us because they feel familiar. If we were raised in households where love was conditional, kindness inconsistent, and peace unstable, we may grow up believing that chaos is normal and mistreatment is love. So we tolerate emotional abuse, not because we like it, but because some part of us learned to survive through it. And in that survival, we lost our sense of what real love actually feels like. Real love respects emotional boundaries. It doesn't humiliate you and then expect you to smile. It doesn't invalidate your feelings, rewrite your memories, or leave you questioning your own mind. Love doesn't demand silence in the face of pain. Spiritual wisdom teaches that true connection honors both closeness and space it nourishes, not drains. The moment someone repeatedly crosses your emotional boundaries and justifies it with, "I'm your parent," or "You're too sensitive," is the moment you must realize they're not protecting the bond, they're protecting their power. When emotional abuse is normalized in the name of family, loyalty becomes a weapon. You're told you must forgive, must accept, must keep the peace, but at what cost? At the cost of your peace, your voice, your identity. Jung said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." The more we pretend emotional harm isn't happening, the more it festers. And the deeper it roots itself in the soul, manifesting as anxiety, people-pleasing, self-abandonment, or worse, passing it down to those who come after us. The healing begins when you choose clarity over comfort. When you dare to say, "This is not okay," even if your voice shakes. When you realize that protecting your inner child matters more than preserving toxic tradition. You are not ungrateful for setting boundaries. You are not cruel for walking away from repeated disrespect. You are not wrong for saying, "Enough." Emotional wounds require more than time. They require truth. And the truth is, even if it comes from family, abuse is still abuse. Let spiritual wisdom guide you back to yourself, not to the version molded by guilt or fear, but to the one who knows their worth, who understands that love never has to hurt, and who finally stops calling emotional pain normal. Don't forget to subscribe for more spiritual wisdom on breaking free from toxic cycles and reclaiming your emotional power. If this message resonates, share it and let others know. Abuse, even in the name of love, is never okay. 6. The courage to break the cycle. Staying in toxic family dynamics doesn't just hurt, it rewires your sense of identity. It whispers to you that you're the problem, that the pain is your fault, that love means enduring disrespect in silence. But this isn't love, it's conditioning. And the longer you stay, the deeper that lie embeds itself into your nervous system. You begin to feel guilty for even wanting peace, as if your desire for wholeness is betrayal. But Carl Jung reminds us, healing begins when you stop inheriting and passing on pain. And that begins the moment you choose to break the cycle. You're not selfish for walking away. You're awakening. Choosing yourself isn't a rejection of others. It's a reclamation of the self you lost while trying to be everything for everyone. And when you begin that journey, resistance will come. Family members may lash out, accuse you of being cold, dramatic, or ungrateful. But don't let their projections become your truth. You are not responsible for the emotions people feel when you set a boundary that protects your soul. Pain passed down isn't sacred. Loyalty that demands silence is not love, it's control. You were not born to be a container for generational wounds. You were born to become whole. And that means saying no to the patterns that keep you small, anxious, or invisible. That means honoring the voice inside you that says, I deserve peace, even if it means walking alone. Because the cost of staying is your spirit, and no relationship, not even with blood, is worth losing yourself. The real act of courage is not surviving toxic love. It's walking away from it before it destroys the parts of you still capable of healing. That choice is where spiritual awakening begins, when you finally stop negotiating your worth to keep the family system stable. You don't heal by going numb, staying silent, or pretending everything is fine. You heal by feeling the truth, grieving the illusion, and stepping into the unknown, even if your voice trembles. Choosing self-respect is not an act of ego. It's an act of spiritual intelligence. Because the soul knows what the mind denies, that you are not here to suffer for the comfort of others. You are here to become. And becoming often means releasing those who only loved the version of you that kept quiet, stayed small, and never asked for more. Healing doesn't require revenge. It requires release. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say goodbye. If this message stirred something deep within you, declare your breakthrough in the comments. I choose healing. I choose peace. I break the cycle. And if you felt seen by this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. More truth and healing are on the way. Remember, setting boundaries isn't about rejection. It's about self-respect. You are not selfish for protecting your peace, even from those closest to you. As Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. If this message has spoken to your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos on healing, transformation, and inner truth. Stay grounded, stay empowered, and always choose yourself with love.